Good morning. My name is Richard Wexler, and this is Caring in America, the podcast for caregivers and care recipients. So, folks, on this morning's episode, just going to be me. I want to talk to you guys a little bit and really encourage you to listen to this episode and pass it on to friends and relatives. Somebody asked me a couple days ago, why am I doing this podcast? And I thought about it. And I've been working in this environment now for 17, 18 years. Started almost 20 years ago when all four of our parents got ill. Our life changed. And we were, I've talked about this. We were probably that average family, both of us working. I had a long commute to work. My wife worked out of our house. At that point, we had two kids, our son 11, our daughter 7. They were involved in a lot of activities, sports, dance, plus all the homework, everything that kids of that age normally get involved in. I worked long hours. I left the house at 5:30 in the morning, would usually get home about 7 at night. Then things changed, and we found out that our parents weren't doing well. Again, we're not that different than a lot of folks out there working, have kids. I mean, this can affect a family when the adult children are 40 to, I've worked with some adult children that are around my age now, around 70, and have parents that are still with us in their mid-90s and not doing well. So why am I doing this podcast? There's a lot of other things I could be doing. I'm 71 years of age. I could just be kind of sitting back, but why am I doing this? Because, and I've talked about this, most folks aren't going to have 4 parents to take care of. A lot of folks will have 1, maybe 2. Maybe it's mom, maybe it's mother-in-law, maybe it's a grandparent, maybe it's spaced out over time. A lot of folks don't get them back to back to back like we had over 14 years, but it can happen. And we talked about 30, 40 years ago, longer, 50 years ago, the parents would move in with the kids. Maybe they'd make it to mid-70s and they'd pass away. Obviously, things have changed with medicine and medication and hospitalization and all the services that we have out there. And we've seen people live well into their 100s. And we're seeing, my mom passed away at 96. We're seeing a lot of people live to that age. So what does that mean? It means that, and I'm being totally honest, and this is why I'm doing this. Stuff happens at some point, whether we're unfortunately ill in our 60s, our 80s, our 90s, or maybe we're doing great till over 100. At some point, unless we figure out a way to change this, stuff happens. Can be a fall, can be an illness, can be both. Our bodies change. I'm not the same person I was 30, 40 years ago. I obviously don't do the same things. I live in a neighborhood where a lot of folks are younger than me and they're doing all the things that I did 30 or 40 years ago. And I can't do anymore. That's reality. So when I say we need to really understand that at some point, people around us that we love, that are probably older, something is going to happen. They're going to get ill. They're going to fall. In many cases, it's both. The weakness from an illness causes instability, which causes a fall. Or simply, mom who's in her 70s and doing great goes to the grocery store one morning, gets distracted walking out, trips on the curb, falls, something breaks. And things change. So when I talk about that four-letter word plan, why? I mean, we didn't, and I've talked about that a lot. We really didn't think about this point in our life when all of a sudden we would have our older loved ones not doing well. And what did that mean? I talk about, so in my family, I still had to generate money coming in. That still meant leaving at 5:30 in the morning and getting home at 7. So this fell on my wife as she was going from parent to parent, taking care of them. And they lived somewhat close to us. At least we were lucky. They weren't hundreds of miles away or multiple states. You know, my parents were 40 miles in one direction, her parents were 40 miles in another direction. But living in the Bay Area where we lived, traffic was bad. That drive would usually take at least an hour and a half. So think about what I'm talking about. This is why I'm doing this. So where do your parents live? Where do your grandparents live? Where do the in-laws live? And if something happens, and I've said this forever, there's going to be a real small percentage of us that say, Mom, Dad, thanks for the great life, and guess what? You're on your own. Not many people are going to do that. Do you live close to them? Are you 20 miles away, 30, 40, 50? Or are you hundreds? Or do you live in one state and they live 10 states away? And what are you going to do? Are you going to travel back and forth? Do you have the finances to do that? Are mom and dad willing to move to where you guys are? And we've talked about this a lot. Is your house big enough? So they go, yeah, we'll move in with you guys. And you have a 3-bedroom house. And it's 2-story. And dad can't really navigate stairs anymore. And all the bedrooms are upstairs. I mean, there's so many things to think about. Just things that I call reality. So what does that mean? Or are they going to stay living where they're living? And we've talked about this numerous times, and one of you guys or a brother or a sister is going to say, okay, I'm going to move away from my family, my wife, my partner, my spouse, whomever it may be, my kids, take a leave from my job, have to quit my job, and go take care of someone. And what I've found and what we usually find, it's that getting well, if they can get well, takes a while. So maybe you think, well, I'll go there for a week and that'll be fine. But no, they're going to need help a lot longer than a week. So what are you going to do? And we've talked about the cost of care. And what's bringing someone in that's a professional. Yeah, and you can bring someone in that I call Mary off the street. And that person will most likely charge less than a professional. But we've talked about that. What happens if her car doesn't start? What happens if she gets ill? What happens if it's a he and the same thing? Who's the backup? And mom or dad needs someone there every day. And now this person can't get there. Why am I doing this? I'm trying to get people to think about this. And we've talked about this a lot. I know it's not a fun subject. I know you'd rather be talking about almost anything. I've talked about the fact I've literally stood in front of thousands and thousands of people. And I can't tell you the number of people, when I talk about this issue, put their hand up and basically say, this isn't going to happen in my life. And if it is, it's not going to be that difficult. And how do you know that? First of all, how do you know it's not going to happen? Chances are it is. And how do you know it's not going to be that difficult? Maybe they live down the street. Maybe it won't be that bad. And you, your spouse, your partner can go there every day, your kids. But how many families still live down the street from mom and dad or grandparents? I don't know many. Most families that I know, friends that I've had over 30 or 40 years, have moved far away from where their life began. They don't live close to their older loved ones. They'll see them Thanksgiving, they'll see them at Christmas, they'll see them for an event in the family. So, why am I doing this? I want people to think. Then after you've thought about it and talked to your partner, spouse, kids, I want people to do stuff. What does do stuff mean? Start understanding what it's going to look like if something does happen. And how is that going to fit into your life? And what is going to happen if they live hundreds of miles away or a few states away? Who's going to take care of them? Do the parents, do the grandparents have the money to bring someone in? Are they willing to move to an assisted living? Do they need memory care? Is someone from your family, you, your spouse, partner, whomever, going to move to where the parents, grandparents live? It's, again, reality. Until, and I don't know when, if until will ever happen, we figure out how, as people age, they stay well. They don't fall, they don't get ill, they don't do both. This is going to keep happening. We've talked about the numbers. There's over 100 million people, around 110 million approximately, that are 50 and older in this country. We have, and you guys know this, we have close to 80 million baby boomers moving north, getting older, with the oldest turning 80 in less than 2 years, in 2026. 80. I mean, we were always the vibrant young ones, spending all the money, helping the economy, so on and so forth. And now we're older. The youngest boomers, born in 64, are turning 60 this year. We're in a different stage. We're in a different point in our lives. So why do I do this? Folks, I know there's so much going on. There's so much going on in everybody's life, from work to wanting to enjoy life, to take vacations if you can afford it, to kids doing all these different things. Kids are about ready to go back to school again. Here we are in just about mid-August. But that's out there too. And like us, maybe you don't think about it or haven't thought about it. Then all of a sudden it creeps up on you. Please do yourself a favor. Do mom and dad or your grandparents a favor. Think about it and then start acting on that, talking with them, what I call this family conversation. Not, Mom, Dad, we need to talk. Mom, Dad, I need some advice. And then slowly start bringing this up. The first thing you want to find out is, where would they want to live as they age? They're probably going to say in their home. Okay, is that real? Can that work? But folks, think about it. That's why I'm doing this. I want you to think. Then I want you to take action. Action is starting to really understand what you're going to need as far as services beyond care, financial, legal, all the other pieces, transportation. If Mom or Dad can't drive anymore, and you guys don't live close, think about it, take action. That's why I'm doing this. If you want to reach out to me, you have a comment, question, you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, eldered2023@gmail.com. Until we talk again, have yourself an awesome day.